few people, hopefully. Guys, everyone jumping on. I'll just wait a moment, see if anyone does jump on to the live broadcast. Today, we've got Korenne celebrating 12 months sobriety just recently. She has an amazing story that I've just learned a little bit more about, and I'm really excited and really keen to hear your story, Korenne. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring you onto the screen, Korenne. I'm going to do this. Just a moment, Korenne. We're going to kick the shit. I am just a man in recovery doing my very best to share a positive message of love and hope to anyone out there struggling. My name's Danny Shannon. I spent 17 years in the pain, hurt and misery of active addiction, heroin, meth, crack, anything you could get your hands on. I am absolutely blessed to have found recovery on the 15th of September 2009. This is the Kick the Shit podcast. Each week, my guests and I will share our stories around the social and emotional impacts that addiction can have on both ourselves and our loved ones. Let's go! Korenne, I am so proud of you for celebrating one year, 365 days recovery. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Seriously, guys, I just had a little chat with Korenne. I'm really excited. Well, I'm really keen to learn so much more about your story. You've got a big story to tell, and I just want to give a shout out to any families out there, especially mums, dads, and families that have been affected by drugs and alcohol in the system. With children. I'm really keen to touch into that part of your story. So, how are you feeling, Korenne? I know this is the first time you've done an interviews type thing. How are you feeling right now?
I'm a little bit nervous. It's a little different, but I'm excited as well. I like what you're doing here with this podcast, and I think it's really important for people to hear the message. So, I'm excited.
Well, on that note, Korenne, can we just start off with this before we dive back basically into your childhood, you growing up, mum and dad? I want to hear all about that. But you just recently, just a few days ago, celebrated 1 year recovery. How was that for you? Have you ever had 12 months recovery before?
No. Yeah, it was an amazing feeling, and I was really overwhelmed. Like at the beginning, I was really overwhelmed by the love and support that I now have in my life, and just really proud of myself. Like I've put in the work, and my life has changed because of it, and it's amazing milestone.
It's a huge like I remember the feeling too. I'm very blessed to have had 13 of those milestones now, but I remember, like, it's actually incredible to think about where you've come from. And I know, because I had a brief chat with you, like, where you came from, to think that. And so you can, just for the record, when you say you celebrated 12 months clean, is that alcohol and drugs? Is that just drugs? What is that, complete sobriety?
So I've not touched anything for 12 months, but my problem was drugs. So I do see alcohol would be a problem for me as well. So I steer clear of it all.
Yeah, cool. Wow. All right. Korenne, let's go. What I want to ask you first of all is I want to go back. I want to understand. I want to let people understand and know you. How was life growing up? Take us as far back as you like. Mum, dad, brothers, sisters. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up in your childhood?
Okay. So for me, it all starts way back when my parents met in rehab. My parents both, mum and dad, battled addiction.
In rehab.
My dad battled heroin addiction. My mum battled all addictions. Her main thing was prescription pills, but her bigger battle was mental health. She suffered a lot of mental illness, and I guess their relationship fell apart pretty early on. Like I was 2 when they split, and throughout my childhood. I don't think I ever saw them speak again. I ended up, like, me and my sister, we ended up with my mum for the first few years. We went into rehab with her. You know, I remember sort of vaguely, we didn't really have a stable home. We were sort of moving from home to home after that stint of rehab she did, and then it all, like, all my main memories, you know, come from around the age of 7, when mum got, like, she got her own place, which was housing commission, and for me, that's where all the sort of, I guess, trauma began, you know, like, her mental health really took a turn. I found myself, you know, I would come home from school and she'd tried to commit suicide. You know, I witnessed that a fair bit. I visited her in psych wards a lot. And she had the habit of bringing people home from the psych wards. So the family home, like, the home was always a very chaotic place to be in. But I also felt I don't know, like, a responsibility to my mum to try and keep her safe, I guess, because I could see, even at that young age, you know, I could see that she wasn't keeping herself safe. I also you know, in that environment, there wasn't the parenting that should have been going on. There wasn't food in the house. There wasn't that loving, caring, supportive family environment. You know, it was really dysfunctional, and at the time, you know, it was all I knew, and I felt that, you know, like I said, you know, like, I just cared that my mum was okay, and that did carry over. You know, like, I was at primary school, and I remember being pulled into the principal's office once because they noticed I didn't have lunch. And so from that day forward, I would go to the supermarket and steal something, so it looked like I had lunch, because I didn't want my mum getting in trouble, you know. And that carried on for a couple of years, and you know, it carried on for a couple of years, but eventually the department, you know, caught on to all of this stuff. And at 9, I was removed from my mum's care, and it was then that, like, I started hanging around with an older crowd, and at the time I didn't have the supervision of a parent in the home, so it was like they were taking me under their wing. You know, I did, I guess, a lot of things I feel like I did really young, because of that older crowd, but I also felt that I don't know, people cared about me, because that's not what I was feeling at home. And so I started drinking with them, and that's probably where it all began.
Korenne, just let me just recap for a moment. So can we just go back quickly? So did you say mum and dad met in rehab?
Yes.
Okay, and then we jumped ahead a bit then, because then you talked about living with mum and dad. So does that mean you so were you conceived in rehab, or because you, what, tell
No,
us.
no. So what happened? So they met in rehab. They ended up in a relationship, fell pregnant with my sister.
Yeah.
Got married when they were pregnant with my sister.
Okay.
Had my sister, fell back into addiction, fell pregnant with me, and I think I was about 2 years old when they split.
Yeah, and then you haven't seen much of your dad since then, you said.
I saw him a bit, like, so through, after the first sort of few years, there was, like, he went back to his sort of hippie life in the city, and Mum had us for a few years, and then he wanted to get back into our lives, and there was custody battles that went back and forth. There were times like I remember, I think my dad had custody of us, and I must have been maybe 10, and me and my sister were playing in the courtyard, and my mum came and kidnapped us, and so then we were with my mum again for probably 6 months, and then that happened again in the reverse. But it was back and forward for a while, you know, and it was like when I was with my dad, I felt, you know, there was a lot of dysfunction in that home, but it was very different. You know, it was more closed off to the world kind of dysfunction, and my mum's stuff was very public. You know, it was very public.
It's heartbreaking to hear that stuff about a 7-year-old having to look after mum. And you mentioned having been in situations where you had to call paramedics, was it? Or I can't like that stuff breaks my heart. You know, I can't possibly imagine what you have been through, and that's why I started this episode off with just saying I'm so proud of you, you know, because I hear some of that stuff from you before we jumped on, and now you're sharing this. Man, it's a miracle that you are here. And yeah, okay. So all right. So that's where we were at. I just wanted to go back. I wondered about mum and dad meeting together. And so you're 7 and you're starting to look after mum. You're stealing lunches. What a brave kid you are. Like, what a smart kid you are, to having to steal lunches so that mum wouldn't get in trouble and get. Wow, how does a kid come up with those ideas?
At the time, and for a long time in my life, you know, that was all I knew, and to me, you know, that was just survival skills, and I didn't really look at my life and compare it to others. It was just what I knew, you know, and it was all I knew, and so I just did what I had to, and like I said, like I think I really held on to a responsibility over my mum, you know, and and that carried on, you know, like after I got removed at 9, and we were made to live with my dad, and I really struggled with that because, you know, behind closed doors, my dad was having his own struggles with his addiction, and I really struggled that, you know, the department took me from one dysfunctional home and put me in another, you know, and on top of that, I continuously sat in anxiety and worry for my mum, because.
And your sister too? Your sister was with you?
My sister, she really I guess handled things very differently to me. She was in a position where she was really close with her friend's family, and was able to stay there a lot of the time, and that for me was a relief, because I knew that was, even though she was 18 months older than me, I was very protective over her as well, and that was one less sort of person that I was really worried about at the time, you know, and you know, I think it's impacted her a bit, you know, in her later years. But at the time, she was very sort of closed off to everything, whereas I was very sort of hands-on, wanting to fix everything, you know. And yeah, like my mum lived across the road from my primary school, and when we were removed from her and sent to my dad's, we continued to go to the same primary school. But I was told I wasn't allowed to see my mum, like, because I just wanted to see her after school or whatever. And I spent probably about 6 months to a year going against what everyone had told me, and I would
Good.
sit at school and I would wait for that bell to go, and I would run over to my mum's house. And I remember I would always hold my breath opening the door because I was so worried that I was going to find her in a state again, you know. And then once I got there, I didn't want to leave. And so I wouldn't. And then police would come and take me away from her, and take me back to my dad's, and that went on for a year. Like, we started sort of like, I'd go there after school, and then we'd go and hide at one of her friends' houses. Like, it became, you know, chaotic in itself, really, in reflection. But you know, I refused to be told that I couldn't see my mum,
Of
you know.
course.
And eventually got to a place with my dad where he allowed that, and so I stopped rebelling, you know. Like, I was able to go and see my mum, and then I was able to go back to his place and, you know, do all the things. So yeah, like, it was really hard, and I held a lot of resentment toward my dad for a long time over it. But, you know, we got through that. Yeah.
Wow. So just on that, like back then, I don't know how long ago we're talking exactly, but I'm just imagining. So because you're the kid who's going to mums, it's not like mums coming and getting you. I would imagine the laws would, if mum was coming to grab you, she'd be locked up. But because
Mhm.
you're, well, I would think anyway. But because you're going to mum, I guess she avoided that. And what a unique situation. How horrible or how convenient that mum lives across the road from school, and you're not allowed to see her. I'm so happy that you used to sneak over there every day, you know?
Yeah. No, it was good, you know. But, you know,
Breaks my
like
heart
I
this stuff, man.
yeah, I like I said, you know, I started hanging out with, I guess, you know, you could say, the wrong crowd. I completely saw them the right crowd at the time, you know, like, for what I was going through. Like, they were the right people to sort of take me under their wing. But with that did come drinking, and like, I started stealing a lot more, and um even, like, I started selling weed at primary school, you know. And it wasn't even for me, it was for these older kids,
Yeah.
you know. They just had me sort of doing that, and I just wanted to be accepted or whatever, so I continued to do it, you know. I didn't see anything wrong with it. Um and I guess from there I went into high school, and I was drinking a lot. But, like, um you know, probably from, like, Thursday to Sunday, every night we'd all go to Cronulla Beach and get really drunk, like, you know, really, really drunk, and go to house parties, and do sort of the things that you do in high school, or some people do in high school. I was definitely doing it a lot. And I started fighting a lot, you know. Like, a lot of my, I guess, internal trauma was coming out in aggression, in fights, you know. Like, um yeah, you know, I got arrested when I was 13 or 14 for fighting at New Year's, and like, I was getting suspended a lot from school for fighting and other things. And it, you know, like, it was all starting to really come out in my behaviors. um but I guess, you know, like, there were people that, I guess, looked out for me, you know. I was in year 8, you know. I got sent on a camp called Camp Break Free, which they sort of select I think 10 students that are struggling with behavioral issues or whatever, um and a few that aren't, I think. And they throw us all out for a sort of, I don't know, like, it was a leadership program of some sort to try and help us better navigate our lives, I think the point was. And you know, so I did that, and I had a lot of guidance, going back to that younger years. Like, when I was 7, you know, I had the police officer from the PCYC at Sutherland, really trying to look out for me and really trying to help me, knowing what my home life was like. And so, you know, I had people trying to step in and, you know, realign me to stay on the right track. And, you know, like it did for a lot of the way.
good.
But,
Yeah.
but, you know, my mum ended up losing her life to addiction when I was 15 and she was 39. And a lot changed for me then, you know, like I guess.
What happened, Korenne? Can I ask? You said your mum lost her life. What happened?
So
If you feel comfortable talking.
yeah, no, that's fine. I just kind of don't know where to start. So she was in a relationship, a bit of a domestic violent relationship, and 3 days before she died, she woke up and her partner had died. He was doing weekend detention at the time. It was New Year's Eve and had been given something on his weekend detention that he took, and it took his life. And that was New Year's Eve. And I remember getting the phone call from my mum, and she was in his, you know, like she was in a state. And so at this time, you know, like I was 15, so I was seeing my mum a lot more, and no one was really getting involved in my relationship with my mum anymore, which was great. And I was able to go there and stay with her and stuff like that. And so I did, you know, and I spent a couple of days with her and tried to sort of help her through the traumatic experience that she just had. And you know, she didn't get any freedom from her addiction to pills. You know, she was still taking way more pills on a daily basis. But like I don't remember a day where she didn't take pills, you know. And at this time, you know, she wasn't sleeping. She was going through that. And I remember, like, I was there for the days leading up, and she was sort of getting to a better place. And I decided to go out drinking with my friends. And so I went out drinking and came home, and she was she was passed out. And like, I still hold a lot of guilt around this, even though, you know, I've had help around it, but I hold a lot of guilt because her body was shutting down. You know, she was ODing on her drug of choice, and her body was shutting down. And I feel that 7-year-old me would have known that. And 15-year-old me just let it happen. So yeah, basically, I know that it was an accidental overdose. Even though, you know, I had to really fight with my family, like her mum and her side of the family, because everybody just wrote it off as a suicide, you know. And I really struggled with that and fought for that, because I knew that it wasn't her trying to take her own life on this occasion. Mainly because every occasion that she had tried to do that, like, I got a letter, you know, I got that goodbye, you know. And yeah, so I know that it was an accidental overdose. And yeah, like, from then, like, my views on, I had grown up with a view of, like, I'm against drugs. You know, I didn't see drinking as drugs or addiction. I saw that as just, you know, like, the teenage lifestyle. And I had this sort of really strong belief that drugs were bad. You know, drugs are bad. And it was like losing my mum, and I lost that belief as well, which is kind of ironic. But but that's where I started using drugs. You know, it started with ecstasy for me, ecstasy and speed. Um,
Corinne, sorry, just one,
and yeah,
Corinne.
that's right.
Sorry. I know that was really yeah, deep. Are you okay after just talking about that?
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
see that
yeah.
coming. Yeah, that's so
That's all right.
heavy. Thank you. I can't possibly imagine, in the world, what a few young 15-year-old would feel like. And obviously, it still weighs heavy. Thank you for being so brave to share that.
That's okay.
All right. So, and you feel like one thing you did get out of that at the time was that you didn't like drugs, you were against drugs, but then you
Mm,
started experimenting.
yeah. So you know, like with the knowledge I have today, I think I definitely was trying to deal with losing my mum. You know, like we had been um so close. You know, like we were best friends, partners in crime. We were, you know, like we had
Yeah.
that really deep connection.
Mm.
Um, and looking back, you know, I guess although I put on this brave face and um perception of being okay, that's just how I was brought up. You know, like that's the conditioning I had from a very young age, that I had to be okay no matter what happened. And deep down I wasn't, you know. And the answer for me was escaping the reality with drugs. And yeah, that's where, you know, weekends turned from drinking into using drugs. Um and then it grew, you know, like I stayed, like I went through high school. I stayed till year 12. And a lot of my drive to do that was to, like, one, for my mum, two,
Yeah.
I was really treated like the black sheep of the family, like with my sister and my cousins. You know, they were all quite, I guess, I don't know, responsible or whatever, you know, like they hadn't taken the same path as me. And I wanted to make a point. I think, like, the whole reason, the whole drive for me to get my HSC was just to make a point to my family that I can do these things. And so I did. I stayed in school, um and tried to make a change, I think, you know. Like, I stopped fighting. I stopped I s- I'd stopped stealing and stuff like that. Like, I'd made a few little changes, but the bigger change that I had made was I had picked up drugs, you know. And that's what became the thing that changed my life from there on, you know. I was 17 when I first picked up ice, and I don't think I put it down until I found out I was pregnant, like, which was 8 years later, you know. And through that period, I just went along with it being a lifestyle, and I didn't see the damage that was going on in my life. You know, I felt like I was still in control of my life. I did my diploma in music production. I went over to LA to represent New South Wales TAFE at music conferences, and had opportunities offered to me to, you know, start a career in music production over in America. And
Wow.
all the whole time, like, I was still using daily. And I missed those opportunities because I was using daily. And I came up with all these other reasons why I missed them, and you know, really justified it in my head. And in reflection, you know, I can see it's because I wasn't in control of my life or anything like that. You know, like, the drugs had taken a hold of my life, and they were dictating everything that I was doing, basically. And
Sure.
and then like I ended up I kind of missed another part. Like, you know how I said people have tried to keep me on the right track. So I also, when I was 18, I went and did the Kokoda Trail in Papua New Guinea.
Wow.
Another sort of leadership program that you know, the police from the Shire had put me forward to, and again, you know, in an attempt to try and steer me back onto that right track, you know, and I, you know, I did, it was me and 9 other guys, and it was an incredible experience, and it did teach me a lot. It taught me a lot of resilience, and it taught me a lot about, you know, that I can push myself a lot further than when I want to give up. There's so much more to give, you know, and that's carried through, especially in this recovery, you know. But yeah, so that happened. Then yeah, like I was just sort of throwing away opportunity after opportunity in my life because I was smoking ice every day, you know. I was selling ice. I was just stuck in that kind of lifestyle. And I you know, like I couldn't really see a different way for my life. Then I fell pregnant. And you know, my childhood flashed before my eyes. I viewed all my lifestyle choices completely different, and that was the first time that I probably recognized that, you know, like I've been living a life of addiction. You know, it wasn't a lifestyle choice. It wasn't, you know, like partying and having fun and doing this. Like I was stuck in full-blown addiction, and I didn't want to bring a child into the life that I was brought into. And so that's when I first reached out for help with it. You know, throughout the pregnancy, I was reaching out to services through the hospital and doing a lot of I guess drug and alcohol counselling, and I was doing a lot of talking about a lot of this like childhood stuff, you know, like I hadn't really delved into that, and I started getting a bit of an understanding around why I probably picked up in the first place. But yeah, I was trying to focus more on changing my life to give my daughter a better life than what I had. And you know, unfortunately, a few months into that pregnancy, my relationship became really violent. He was also in addiction, and you know, it just went from bad to worse really quickly, and I kept, like, I was just in this headspace of wanting to make it work, to give my child, you know, a family, like something that I didn't have growing up, and that was such a like I put up with so much trying to make that happen, and you know, like I had my daughter, and she's absolutely beautiful. And
What's her name?
London. London's her name. She's 9 now. And
Beautiful
yeah,
name.
you know, like, thank you. And the yeah, like the first year of her life, it was really chaotic. Like the violence didn't stop. The drug use didn't stop. You know, police were called all the time. And you know, like I got to a point where I knew something had to change, and just after London turned 1, I found out I was pregnant again, with my second child. And around the same time, things got really violent again, and police were called, and the police put an AVO on the father, and that didn't stop him. Like he was following me to, anyway, like there was, a lot more continued after the AVO. And so then me and London got relocated, so he didn't know where we were, and to keep us safe and all of that. And while I went through all of that, I lost my second daughter at 30 weeks gestation. So her name's Dakota. She's my beautiful rainbow angel. And so me and London got relocated, and I had just lost Dakota, and I started using again. I started using again in a very different way to how I was using before. But all the same, I started using again, and I fell back into smoking daily. But this time I knew there was help out there, and so I reached out for help. And was really lucky to get into the same rehab that I was at as a child with my mum, to get in there with my child. And
Amazing.
yeah, like it, like it even got weirder that the childcare worker at this rehab had been there since it opened. So she looked after me as a child there, remembered my mum, and was now looking after my child. And like I look at that as a wow moment, but I also look at that as like something's got to change. I've got to break the fucking cycle.
Yeah.
And I tried really hard, and I did that program, and it just was like, it wasn't enough. It was what I call today a bubbled rehab. Like it was quite okay to do the work in there, but although I learnt a lot of skills and tools that I can use, I didn't have or see the evidence of them working out in the community. Like I got out of that rehab, and I was back in the same unit, the same people around me, the same lifestyle going on. There was no change. Like the change was just this like 3-month rehab, and then it was back to exactly the same thing. Yeah, do you want to say something?
No. It's okay. You're not loving it. Sorry, did I look like I was going to say something? No, I was just scratching my lip. You're all right, go.
That's all right. Yeah, so yeah, like I did, like I didn't last very long once I got out of there, even though, I knew that I could go without it. I just proved it in the bubble rehab.
How long did you get up that time?
Well, the 3 months in there, not long after the 3 months in there, like really a couple of weeks, I think. And I strongly believe it's because I still didn't understand the disease of addiction. I understood at that stage that I had a drug addiction. I understood that that was a problem, but I didn't understand how deep the disease of addiction can be. And although, like for me, like it played out in drug use, when those drugs were taken away, it played out in other things. So even back then in recovery, I don't believe today that I was in recovery, because my addict was still in motion in other areas that I didn't understand. And that's what's been different for me this time, which I'll get into a little bit down the track. But so like I got out, I didn't stay clean. But like, it sounds ridiculous, but I feel like I tried to really manage the way I used, and I really, you know, it was very different. The way I was using was very different to me. Like, I was using quite a small amount of a morning, so I could get up and, you know, get London ready for daycare and go and face the world, you know, and it became sort of like a daily medication like that, not like how I
Sure.
previously used to really annihilate myself, you know. It was definitely different different to prior to the rehab and everything else. But you know, it did grab its hold again, and it started becoming more and more over a couple of years. You know, like, I started selling to support my habit. I started you know, I guess, getting involved in the wrong circles of people, and I was falling really back into the chaotic life that I was living before I had London. And I guess, you know, that didn't go unnoticed. And unfortunately, London was removed from my care. She was removed from my care 3 years ago. And after being a single mum to her for 6 years,
Horrible
you
shit.
know, she was 6. She was 6, and you know, I had raised her on my own for those 6 years. You know, she'd just finished kindergarten. We were like, I got a phone call from the department on the 3rd of December, and I went, you know, like, I went in the same day to have an interview with them, walking into the same building that I was taken into as a fucking 9-year-old child, and I had a lot came up for me there, and I sat in that interview, and I said to them that, you know, like, I had relapsed and I wanted help, and the way things played out for me didn't work out great. You know, like, I didn't really get any support from them. 2 days later, like, I was putting up the Christmas tree with London, and they came and removed her, and you know, I haven't had her since. You know, I haven't had a visit without a supervisor since, and you know, I had a lot of fears come up for me through that. You know, stuff to do with her father, stuff to do with the system, stuff to do with myself, and I struggled really. Like, it was extremely difficult for me to do the one thing I needed to do to get her back, you know. And
Which was
unfortunately,
what?
hey,
Which was what? What was the one thing you needed to do
well,
to get her back?
I had to get clean. You know, I had to get clean, which I was prepared to do. But you know, the things in the universe happened. COVID hit, right? COVID. So this was December 2019. I I reached out to services, and I was trying to get all this help, and then all the rehabs went into lockdown because COVID hit, and all my attempts for the help were falling short, which was making me, like, I was, you know, struggling daily, just being without her, you know, like, not knowing if she was okay, like, not being able to talk to her,
I can't
not
imagine.
knowing what was going through her mind, you know, like,
Yeah,
all of that was so hard. And then, like, I started using a lot more. I found that, you know,
Korenne, where was she? Where was she? Who was she with? Do you know?
so in the beginning she went with my sister.
Okay.
My sister took her in the beginning. My sister
Yeah.
had her family, her 3 kids,
Yeah.
and I will forever be grateful for the help that she did there. You know, she also stopped talking to me, like, my family at this
Yeah.
stage. all kind of cut me off, which was something else that was really hard, you know, for my dad to sort of cut me off, like knowing the childhood that I had and stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, he moved overseas and changed his life, whatever, you know, like that was really hard to take on. You know, I had no support around me from the last couple of people in my life, and that made it really hard. Like I kept trying, you know, I kept trying to do what they were asking of me,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you know, like I just wasn't coping, like, and my
Good.
drug of choice wasn't working anymore, so I picked up something new that was you know, at the time was helping me get through what I was feeling, you know, and that, like, you know, like I felt really, you know, one day I'd wake up really determined and like going to do A, B, and C and everything, and I'd walk down the shop and like the $2 shop that the little Greek lady runs would ask me where London is, and that was enough to just throw me back down, you know, and then the struggles that I had getting into the rehabs that for whatever reason the department weren't finding any compassion around, you know, like no rehab was taking anyone in, but they were telling me you're still not in rehab, you know, like you're not doing the things, and that was enough to sort of throw me back down, and you know, that went on, and I also had to deal with them reintroducing her father into her life, and all that side of things, and you know, he hadn't changed his life, and abused the supervisor in front of her where they had to cancel the visit, and all of this was on paper and in front of the supervisors, but they continued to help him, you know, and I felt really shut out and unsupported, you know, like there was no support from the system to keep us together at all. And eventually I got into rehab in 2020, and you know, I turned up there and they were about to make final orders and place my daughter with his family, which I won't get into the details of all of that, but there was a lot of stuff that went on under their roof that was all through the courts and all documented, and yet the department didn't, I guess, not recognize that, but they just, it didn't affect them, and that was really hard to handle. But you know, like my higher power was looking out for me because I was able to put in an application for a parenting capacity order, which I wasn't even told about until right the very last minute, and that postponed a lot of things, and it also exposed a lot of things, which in turn kept my daughter safe from being placed under that roof. And so I was in rehab. I then moved from one rehab I was at to another longer term rehab that I was aiming to get London back to me with there. And you know, I had the court clinician report that recommended restoration to me. They were just going to wait for the school year to finish so it didn't disrupt the school year, and then stated that, you know, she could come to me up in the rehab. And so this was all really good news.
Yeah.
But what happened for me was that the department refused to allow my daughter to come and stay with me at a rehab, and in that same meeting, they also told me that they removed her from my sister's house and put her into foster care.
Why? Why'd they remove her from her sister's house?
They still haven't told me. And
Are you
I'm
not talking to your sister still?
still not talking to my sister, no.
Okay. So you don't know. Wow. Okay.
Um,
When was that,
and
Korenne? When was that?
that was the 20th of October, 2020.
Okay.
So 2021.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And so from there, I felt, like I felt abandoned by the system. I felt like it didn't matter what I was going to do; it was never going to be enough. And so I ended up leaving that rehab, and I did, like, I left with that attitude, like I from that moment, I was dealing with, they were putting my daughter to live with strangers. She got moved from through 4 different foster families in 4 months. That was 4 schools she got moved through. And
Yeah.
In June 2021, no, so that was October 2020, because June 2021 I was booked in to go to another rehab. And at the same time, like, so the department had told me the complex that I lived in wasn't suitable enough for them to restore London to me, so I had to move as well. And I managed to get a transfer. I moved. I was going into a rehab. London had been with the same family for 6 months. I'd been maintaining my contacts. I knew she was okay. Like, she was like this. Anyway, she was really well looked after. I knew that she was happy there. I knew she was okay. I was then ready to step into a rehab and start going to work on myself. And 2 days before my admission to rehab, I was told that London will no longer be staying with that family. They're moving to Queensland. We're trying to find her a new family. And that was enough to stop me from going to, like, I couldn't go to a place where I couldn't then be in contact with my daughter to find out if she was okay. Like, that's where my head was at. And so I didn't turn up to the rehab there. And I was still in addiction. I was still not doing the main thing that I had to do. And from there, a couple of months later, final orders were made. So in August 2021, final orders were made against me, that London was to stay a child of the minister until she was 18. And even though, like, I knew that was going to be the outcome, hearing the magistrate say it, and sitting there knowing that, I had been trying this whole time, and what was on paper didn't really demonstrate that. And it was really hard to sort of sit quiet and try and justify and validate all the things that I had done. And I really had to be quiet in that, and, like, in reflection, like, I really have to own my part in, like, I didn't put down the drugs, like, I hadn't found a way to do that, and that really hit me. It hit me really hard. And that was the day I tried to take my own life. And that was the moment that I'd really given up, like, I started telling myself that, being an addict was in my DNA and it's never going to change. And, like, I've just got to let it go, surrender to the fact that I'm always going to be an addict and I'm not going to be able to change this shit. And my life changed dramatically, like, I started doing crime. I now have a criminal history that I didn't have before. I stopped caring about consequence, and I stopped caring about the people that I stopped caring about the people I was getting involved with. And so I started getting involved with really dangerous people. And I literally had a death wish, like, I was doing really stupid things to really dangerous people. And maybe deep down, because I didn't succeed in taking my own life, and maybe I wanted somebody else to take it. The hope had gone out in me, like, I didn't value or care about my own life anymore. And it really showed in the things that I was doing in my life. And I was ODing on G all the time, you know, like I had hospital admissions where like I'd been found on the side of the road unconscious. One of those times was in the middle of the March floods, and so like I woke up being treated to hypothermia and a drug overdose in the hospital. I didn't even have my glasses, I didn't have my wallet, my phone, like I don't even know where I got picked up, you know. I only found out from the ambulance bill that it was on the side of a highway somewhere. Like I had given up, you know, like I'd really given up. And the only thing that stopped me from giving up on everything was I didn't want to die knowing that I had given up on the fight for my daughter. You know, like even though I didn't believe that I could win the fight, I didn't want to leave this earth thinking that I didn't give it my all. So I attempted again to get into a rehab, you know, and I picked the shortest rehab that I could find. So I'd still given up, you know, like, but my head had told me like, pick the shortest one so you get that certificate. So then that's all, you know, that's all you had to do, which obviously isn't all I had to do, but that's where my head was at. And I picked the shortest rehab that I could find. And
when was that, Korenne? Was that like a year ago?
Well, so this rehab, it took me 3 times to get into this rehab. So the first time was I was supposed to go in there the June that I didn't go because the final order, like the family placement had changed. The second time would have been a year and 3 weeks ago. A year and 3 weeks ago from today. And again, like I G'd out, I didn't make it to detox, you know, that time. And I was lucky enough to have the strength to even call up, because, you know, my head was telling me, oh, that's that, you know, like it would have taken me months again to call up, but for something in me got me to call up, and they gave me a new admission date for 2 weeks later.
Which was your final time?
Which was my final time, you know, and
this is the Kick the Shit podcast, Korenne. We want to know when did you kick the shit? Like, when was the final time? When was your last day using?
My last day using was April 2020. April 2020, 2022. 2022.
2022, yeah.
So my first clean. Yeah. I was just going to say, so my clean day. My last drug was ice. And
you went into detox that day, did you?
So I went into detox. I almost did it all again, you know, like I was out using until 6 a.m. I hadn't packed.
Yep, I know the story.
I hadn't, you know, I hadn't even planned how I was going to get home and then get all the way into the city to the detox. And but what I didn't do this time was I didn't do G. So I didn't miss the admission, you know, and I arrived and I got through the detox fine, you know, and then I arrived at the short 28-day program that I was going to, and for me, a lot changed for me on the second day I was there, because it was the first time that I stepped into a 12-step program. So it like so much happened for me on that second day. You know, I was encouraged on 3 separate occasions to go to a further program after the 28 days, you know, and like the first time,
which was not your plan, eh?
Well, it was not my plan, but so because I had done the phone assessment with this rehab a year and a half beforehand, when it was my plan, it was on my paperwork. So the counsellor first said it to me, and I said, oh, you know, I've kind of changed my plans now. And she was like, just think about it. And then at this particular rehab, they have a weekly barbecue for ex-residents to come back to. And that was on this day, you know, and I was trying to hide from everyone. So I was inside, like, playing the guitar, and a couple of girls walked in and they introduced themselves. And as they were walking away, they mentioned this same program, like, you should think about going to this other program after here. You know? So that was
Korenne,
twice.
can I just say, do you want to give a shout out to that rehab? Because I want to anyway, because that was actually the final joint I was in back in 2009. Foundation House was my last. It was the beginning of my journey. I was there on the 15th of September 2009, and I just want to, like, if it wasn't for that place, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you. So I just want to give a big shout out to Founder.
100%. Like, I wouldn't be here either if it wasn't for Foundation House. You know, like, the miracle really happened for me there. And you know, like people say, you know, that place loved me back to life, and it really did. And yeah, so back to that second day with the relapse prevention night that happened, I stepped into my first meeting. It was like a women's meeting with all the ex-residents, and I looked on the screen, and there was a woman on that screen who I had done that program back in 2016 with my daughter. Like, I had done that with her. And like, she burst into tears because we'd also fallen, we ended up using together years and years later. And then I lost contact with her, and she'd gone to Foundation House, and then to this to Detour House, you know, and I saw her on the screen, and she burst into tears and said to me, you should go to Detour House. And and that was 3 seeds planted for me in probably a matter of 3 hours. And then experiencing the energy in the room of that meeting, you know, like, experiencing women sit in the damn circle and talk about really raw, vulnerable stuff, and talk about where they, you know, like, where they came from, where they are now. That was the first time in a good while that hope flickered back on for me, because I finally saw people who had battled addiction and had, you know, got into recovery and stayed there. And so my mentality changed that day, and when I saw it was possible, I fucking wanted it, because, you know, I want my daughter back. For that was the drive then, and obviously I still want that today. But in that moment, you know, I thought, fuck, these women can do this, I can do this too. And then so it's like, well, what are they doing, you know? So, like, I had to really I asked lots of questions, and I, you know, I just started watching what they were doing, and it was, you know, all this stuff that I thought I shouldn't do in life, because I thought getting vulnerable would open me up to getting hurt, or like, I thought keeping everything in was protecting me, you know. And watching these women get really raw and vulnerable and talk about, you know, their history and their struggles, and how they got through it, and what they're doing today, and what helps, and all of that, you know, all of that stuff. I just thought, well, this is what I've got to do, you know. And you know, then I learnt that the how part of the 12-step program, you know, the honesty, the open-mindedness, the willingness, all of that. And that's what I then held on to, as well as just all these older cleaner members. Like, I literally held on to them, you know, because I just I wanted what they had. And so I knew, for me to get what they had, I had to do what they were doing. And they were doing meetings, and they were staying connected with people in recovery. You know, I think that's a big thing that I didn't do last time. You know, I thought I could keep friendships and all these people in my life that were still living that way, and it's like that just consumes you and whatever. But what these women were doing, you know, they had built new lives. They'd built lives in recovery, and they had surrounded themselves with you know, with strong women in the 12 step fellowship. And so I started doing that, you know, like I was in that 20, like I was at Foundation House for 28 days, and that introduced me to meetings, to the connection, you know, the connection, being around like-minded people and feeling that sense of belonging, you know, feeling that sense of love and support, um that I've found in like in Foundation House, in Detour House, and in the NA fellowship, you know. And I don't know that I've ever felt um so loved and supported and connected and safe,
I
you know,
love that.
in anywhere in my life.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
I felt, you know,
as in, you mean once you entered rehab and started doing the 12-step fellowship, you're saying right now, just because I want people knowing who have never been a part of that or never knew that was possible. You've come from all this darkness, and right now you're saying that going through that final rehab and getting involved in those women's groups and being part of NA was an absolutely, it's what you're talking about right now, the most incredible experience.
100, like it has changed my life, like um
It's cool. Thank you for
and
sharing.
and right back then in the beginning, you know, like when I had that bit of hope flickered on, you know, like today that hope has turned into faith, you know, like I've got faith, not only in the program and all of that, but I've got faith in my higher power, whatever that may be. I've also got faith in myself. I've got um you know, like I've got so much to live for. I've got so much um to give, you know. And I yeah, like I've gone through, like it's been a process over the last 12 months. I've definitely gone through a lot of shifts throughout that process. You know, so that
Yeah.
was the first one where I felt that hope again. I felt that recovery was possible, and um I saw what I had to do when I started doing it, you know. And then I went through the shift of doing it myself, you know. Once I got out of Foundation House and went to Detour House, you know, that's where I started to do the things myself, you know. I wasn't driven to a meeting by a bus. My legs took me to that meeting, and today my legs still take me to that meeting, you know. Like I built
Yeah.
the evidence that I needed, with the support of the program at Detour House. I was able to build the evidence that I needed to believe in myself, that I could do this in the community. I could do this
Corinne,
on my own. That's
may I
not on
just
my
say,
own because of the program.
sure, excuse me. On that note as
There you
well,
go.
can I just give a plug? You're mentioning Detour House a couple of times there. I just want to say out there, honestly, you know, I must know 200, 300 girls who have been through the program, who I'm connected with, people who have had amazing lives, who've turned their lives around because of that place as well, you know. So that's another wonderful resource for people out there. Like it has, it's like you just mentioned,
It's
you gave you some responsibility. You had to start sort of doing things for
putting
yourself there, didn't you?
that, that's it, you know. Like I had to start putting in the action, you know. Like I've heard a few women say, you know, like Foundation House loved me back to life, and Detour House taught me how to live again. And
Yeah, cool.
those, like I
Yeah,
just got goosebumps because those
yeah,
that statement is so true for me. Like that
sure.
is my exact experience. And like I do have to acknowledge that I did, you know, like it was up to me to put in the action. But once I saw that it was possible, it hasn't been hard for me to put in that action, you know, like because like now I'm getting more and more evidence that what I'm doing is working, you know,
Yeah,
like reaching the
totally
milestone,
get it.
like getting to 12 months, you know, like I've been out of the residential program since August last year, and I had to come back to the home that I was at before I went into rehab, and I've had to create new memories in old places.
Wow.
And I've been able to do that because of the connections and because of the program that I put the action into. And I still go back to Foundation House every Wednesday night, because for me it was that's where it changed. Like, everything changed for me. That's where I felt hope again. And if I can do that for somebody else, like, if that can change somebody else's path, I'll continue going back, because that's what, now where I'm at, I want to give back what was freely given to me, and I want to give back as much as I can. And so, I do the Wednesday night thing. I go back to Detour and help with the new girls there all the time, because I know how broken and where, like, I was just a shell, I was just a shell, and I had given up on thinking recovery was even possible. And so if I can come back and give a message to somebody else who may be in that same frame of mind, I'll continue to do this. I'll continue to do this, and it helps me as much as it could help another person,
And here you are, like 300 over 365 days clean. Transformed your life from addiction to recovery. You've expressed how grateful you are for. You needed that help by the sounds of it. You needed that rehab. I certainly needed it too. I couldn't. I say to everyone, and some people get annoyed with me, but every single person I say, you need to get a rehab, because I needed to go to rehab. I couldn't do this alone. Korenne, it's been thank you so much for sharing all this. We're getting towards the end. Is there is there any wisdom? What would you like to share with people? Oh, actually, sorry, before we go to that, where are you at with London? Where are you at with your daughter now?
Okay, so where I'm at with London, I have to go through the Section 90 process for restoration, which I will start really soon. I had to be 12 months clean.
Okay, yes.
So
you can start that
now I've reached that milestone. It's the ball's in my court now to start that. And I just want to make sure that I get all my what is it, like, eggs in a row? I think that's the saying. That's a saying. Oh, like, it's like I want to get something like that. I just want to get everything lined up, and I went through a shift in this recovery where I realized that I was doing this to get my life back.
Yeah.
And that's been such an important shift for me, and I know that I'm going to put in all the work and get my daughter back when that time's right. I've had to do a lot of work on myself, and there's probably a bit more work that I've got to do on myself, and I've only got one shot at it, so, like, I don't want to rush into it.
Okay. Yeah.
I've also, like, I've started working now as well. Like, I'm working legitimately, paying taxes. Like, I've got this job.
Crazy, yeah. The gifts.
It's just crazy. The gifts of recovery, and like, I'm excelling at the job, like, I was in one position for 9 weeks or something, and I got referred to a higher position, and
Promote.
yeah, like, it's like, I'll bring it back to the 12-step program that I've been in the last 12 months has given me so many more life skills, like, it's transferable skills. Like, it's given me a really different perspective on the way I look at life and how I approach life, and that's transferred over to now building a life like outside of recovery, because that's what we do, you know, like once we get our lives back, we got to learn how to live again, and then we got to start building that up. And the
Absolutely.
process with like with London will take some time, but I know every day that I'm becoming a better person and a better mother, and I'm working towards that, you know. And today I have faith. I have faith that that's going to work out the way it's supposed to. And I still see her every 4 weeks. I get a 4-hour visit. It's all
Okay.
still supervised, and like even with that, you know, like I've got so much support with the supervised visits. Like I've always got very positive
Good.
support from them, which will work in my favor when the court time comes, you know.
You get to talk to
um
her in between it all?
no, no.
So just every 4 weeks, you
A
get
4-hour visit at Parramatta Westfield, which is hard, but you know what, like I'm extremely grateful, you know. I'm extremely grateful that I get that 4 hours with her. I'm extremely grateful that I'm in a country that she gets to be cared for in a family environment. And
Is her
like
family good that she's with? How do you know
I don't
anything about them?
I don't know them well at all. In fact, like they wanted to take her overseas for Christmas, and that was something I really struggled with. And I said to the department that, you know, if I do hand over her passport, like I want to meet these people, you know, like, and I want them to be able to contact me while they're over there, to let me, you know, send me photos, or just stay in contact, because you know it's a big crazy world. And anyway, so that happened, and so I was able to meet them the one time, and they seem okay, and London seems, you know, very happy and well looked after, and all of that. And so I can only be grateful, you know.
For sure, I think so too. That's great. Like all right. Well, all right. It's all this yeah, it breaks my heart, and it's also a beautiful thing too. You know. Corinne, any words of wisdom you'd like to leave? And good luck with London. Like I can't wait to get the update. Like you've celebrated your 12 months. You've now ticked that box. You can start applying for the Section 90. Was it?
Yep.
And I can't wait to hear how you go with that. But any words of yeah, is there, I don't know, any words? I always ask this question. Is there anything, words of wisdom you'd like to share with anyone? Any mums out there, maybe, or whatever it is you want?
um there's, you know, so much to touch on, you know. Like I really believe, you know, that if you're struggling in any area of your life, like reach out um to anyone, whether it be services or um strong supports in your life, or whatever it may be. Like I think we can be our own biggest dangers, you know. Like if we get stuck in our head and in our own thinking, we can really throw away our lives and damage our lives. And so I think it's really important to reach out. I think that you know, don't give up. Don't give up. You know, if you are going through a battle um for your kids, or with the department or whatever, don't give up. And reach out to services, you know. Like my biggest um shortfall, I guess, I just trusted everything the department told me, you know. Like I just believed them, or no, probably didn't even believe them, but I just thought, oh well, they've said that, so that's how it goes. It's not how it goes, and there's so much that you can do for yourself in your battle. Just do a bit of research, and reach out and find out all the things that you can do.
Yeah.
There are lots of programs and services. Lou's Place at Redfern, they're amazing, and they have some really good programs for women who have experienced domestic violence, or kids in care. They're great. If you're struggling with addiction, Foundation House, that's where the miracle happens. I swear, it's amazing. And connection, like connection is key. Connection is key.
Get out of your Corinne. Thanks so much. I'm going to go through some comments. Everyone who's tuned in, we'll just wrap it up there. Korenne, it's been such a pleasure to hear your story. Thank you for being so brave. I'll go and answer. I'll just highlight some of the comments throughout. People just saying good morning. Hey, Korenne, congrats, girl, on 1 year. You're very good morning. Thank you for those inspirational podcasts. You're very welcome, Alison. Olivia says, congrats, Korenne. That's awesome. Again from Alison, massive congratulations on your 365 days with many more to follow. Big smiles. There was a couple of questions. I did see here's one from Catherine. Catherine says, inspirational woman. And also from Ronnie too. Congratulations. May you have many more. Thanks, Ron. I have to catch up for you soon, Ron. Ron Isherwood. Congratulations from, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Chris, Sammy also is giving you a hello. Korenne, Debbie says, Korenne, I pray you get your daughter back in your care. Me too. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions or comments, please drop them now. I'll put them up. Oh, this question. Do you want to answer this? What is G? If you're still there, Debbie and Maggie asked this question. What is G?
Korenne? GHB is just a lethal drug.
Putrid, filthy, stinking drug.
Very dangerous.
Crispy says, "Fuck yeah, found it."
Yeah.
So yeah, true. Yeah, it's just GHB, isn't it? It stands for
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a few plugs for Foundo's golden ticket. They say your Foundo's golden ticket. Is that what that means? Shireen. Lucy, you are a shining light. I see you, Korenne. Keep pushing in what you want to know and you deserve. Don't take no less. Thanks, Lucy. Lucy, I see all your comments, Lucy. I appreciate you. What's Crispy? I couldn't love you anymore, but my respect for you has just shot through the roof. From Crispy.
Thanks,
You must be one of your friends, yeah?
Yeah, Founder girl.
I love Founder girl. Love you, Danny. Good night, Alison. You're very welcome, Debbie. Hang on, let me see if there's any new ones that came through. Oh, hang on. Crispy's got a proposal here for you. Will you marry me? Crispy.
Always.
Always. And what's this, Olivia? Thank you for being so brave and sharing your story with us. Congratulations on your sobriety. Stay strong. Anya, Olivia, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much. Korenne, stay there for a moment. I'm going to end the broadcast. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah, stay there, Korenne.